I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the Will Gather podcast. How do we engage with our older adults in ways that bring genuine connection, joy, and therapeutic benefits? Co-founders Mandy Shoemaker and Michala Gibson have been on a mission to answer that question. Through the establishment of group homes for people living with dementia to the publication of their book, Now Is Found in 2021, they have consistently sought to foster community, connection, and control for those in the dementia community. Their latest endeavor, Connectivities, is a monthly subscription service dedicated to mindful engagement. Curated by memory care experts with vast experience, each package aims to guide caregivers and their loved ones through the simple activities that nurture personal and purposeful interaction. Their goal, to offer not just a product, but a community ensuring every caregiver finds hope and assistance in every box. With over 2 decades of experience and education, co-founder Mandy Shoemaker is no stranger to the world of meaningful engagement. Having transitioned from nurturing young minds as an elementary school principal to co-founding Prairie Elder Care and Connectivities, Mandy is driven by the desire to improve the quality of life for people living with dementia. Today we talk about how we bridge the gap for caregivers who are striving for more than just care, but for true heartfelt connection. Join us as we explore the power of play, innovative engagement methods, and the vital role caregivers and families play in enhancing the lives of our older adults. Whether you're a caregiver, family member, or someone who's passionate about the dementia community, there is helpful conversation for you here. Here is my interview with Mandy Shoemaker. I've been looking so forward to this conversation, so thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
This is going to be great. We're talking all about connection and engagement and how we do that in really meaningful ways. And I know you have such a heart for building a community of support. How did that come to be for you? I know there's a really cool story behind all of this, and I would love for you to tell us more about that.
You bet. So I was in education, an elementary school teacher, and then elementary school principal. I live here in Kansas now. And my sister-in-law, Michala, is and co-founder. She is an RN and has always worked in long-term care. And in 2013, we started tossing around the idea of leaving our job. She was the director of nursing at a large facility, and I was an elementary school principal. And so we ended up leaving our jobs and starting Prairie Elder Care together. And we opened, so Prairie Elder Care is group homes for people living with dementia. And we opened our first home in July of 2014, our second in October of 2015. And then our third and fourth, we were kind of crazy, and we built those from scratch on what we call the Prairie Farmstead. And so those 2 houses opened kind of at the same time in the spring of 2018. So we're just coming up on the 5th year anniversary of those houses. Oh, wow. And then we're now building our third and final home on the farmstead property.
Oh my gosh, so cool. Okay, so talk about the farmstead. What does that mean, farmstead? Does it have what we'd think of as all those kind of amenities?
It does, in a kind of compact, really accessible way. So, we're in Kansas. We're in suburbs of Kansas City, Missouri, on the Kansas side. But Michala and I, when we very first opened, of course, we were, just like everyone else, very taken with Hogeway, the dementia village in the Netherlands, but feeling like that wouldn't necessarily apply to our residents who didn't really come from that. I think of that downtown, like close in a walkable neighborhood kind of village concept. And so most of them came from farms, actually. And so even if they were professionals, like a lot of them owned a bunch of land, or I mean, that was really common. And Michala grew up on a farm. And I'm kind of a farm girl at heart.
Yes.
I was maybe meant to have grown up on a farm, even though I
I
didn't.
get that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so we've always felt like engagement is the key to quality of life, not particularly for people living with dementia, but not only them, just really for seniors, just in any kind of living environment. That is something that's so important to pay attention to. We've worked in the past with the Eden Alternative and, the whole concept of the plagues of our elders, loneliness, helplessness, and boredom, that those things really come from a lack of engagement.
Right.
And as we were kind of developing the Prairie Elder Care model, our mission became giving back community, connection, and control. That those are the things that add up to engagement. So if somebody feels like they're in control, which doesn't come from just an abundance of choice or independence, but it comes from a scaffolding of supports so that we can proactively meet people's needs, so that they're not just in this kind of frantically trying to have their needs met, because a lot of times they do lose the ability to communicate those needs effectively. And so if we can proactively meet people's needs and make sure they feel seen, heard, and known, that then they can connect with the world around them. And so that may be the people around them, other residents, their own families, or the environment. And so when we're talking about a farmstead, that's really the environment that we were focusing on. And so at the farmstead, we have there's 2 homes there now, and they're connected by walking paths. And if you were to walk between, from one to the other, you would go through, we have a little orchard, and then a nice koi pond, and a sensory garden, and a picnic area. And then we have a barn that we really call our barn workshop or classroom. And so we have men's coffees in the barn, or a women's lunch, or we might invite families to come and do an activity. We had a fundraiser where families came and did a potted plant, make and take kind of thing. So we'll have just kind of cool activities. Even during COVID, we actually had families have memorial services there because there weren't a lot of options. So it's really kind of been a multi-use space for us. And then we have a huge community garden, which this year we are just beyond excited because we're kind of getting back to, so when we opened the farmstead, it was the summer of 2018. It was new land to us, and we kind of had to figure out how the water came across that land. There was a lot of water coming across that, so we spent the summer of 18 and 19 really figuring out how can we make this space as usable as possible. And then, of course, the summer of 2020, we were a little bit kiboshed.
Yeah.
So as we were figuring that out during COVID, we built this incredible community garden, which we are now really opening up to the community this summer. And so not only do we have our residents and some of their families really working they've done all of the planning with it, but then we have some community organizations with other adults with disabilities, so younger adults with disabilities coming and working in the garden. We're really excited about that. And then we also have farm animals. So we have some chickens, 2 pigs, and 2 goats.
Oh my gosh.
And one of the things that we find, especially with the farm animals, is, we have people who live with us that range from age 64 to 100. There's so many just different people. Everybody comes from a different background and different life experiences, but they can all connect over shared experiences. And so that is the thing that we really love about the animals, is that they provide, we can, there's 2 houses there on the farmstead, and one of the houses, the animal pen, it's like an iron fence that then backs right to the animal pen. So residents can go right out in our secured backyard and feed them. We sometimes bring them in, and, the goats will headbutt each other and the chickens scratch around. And so it just gives everybody something, just a common experience to have. And that brings us together as a community. So then we have that community connection and control.
Just incredible. You said this term that I'm now going to think about, which is that scaffolding of support. What a cool, we can picture that. We can picture that that's what we need to like hold up our environment and that community. How did you decide to take the model that you have with the kind of redesigning, right? What dementia care looks like in your community,
Absolutely.
and then wanting to foster even deeper connection with what I know you're going to tell us about too, which is that connectivities and
Yeah.
being able to create that framework of more support for people.
Absolutely. So Connectivities was born really out of two things. One was that Michala and I had been looking, when we have these shared experiences, there's a kind of magic that happens that we wanted other people to be able to experience. And so we had for years really been looking for a way to spread that to other communities, have that be a little bit more replicable in other communities. That coupled with just necessity in the fall of 2021 was when we were really overwhelmed by the staffing shortage. And in our model, which is a group home model, we don't ever work short. So when we did have open positions, it was our leadership team that were filling those positions. And I'm a CNA. So, Michala being an RN obviously can do that as well. And so we were all filling in several times a week, which we have somebody who is planning and preparing activities. They weren't always the ones implementing them, but a lot of times the ones implementing them. But those people were really busy working the floor too. And so we started putting bags of activities in the middle of the kitchen table. And lo and behold, one of the things that we'd struggled with almost since day one of Prairie Elder Care, people who are caregivers at home, I hope that they will resonate with this as well, that it's really, really hard to give someone a shower, help them in the shower or help them in the bathroom, and then come back and sit down and think about, what's an activity that I could do that would really, provide the best opportunity for purposeful, meaningful connection, It's hard to come up with that stuff. And even then, the first time you try it, it may not be exactly right. And we found that the more that we did to prepare an activity and make it as seamless to implement as possible, the more likely it was to get done.
Yeah.
So our staff was much more likely to, if they knew everything was going to be there and it was going to be a good activity, they would do it with the residents. And we thought, we might be onto something here. And that was the beginning of Connectivities.
Wow.
During that time in October of 2021, Michala went to the Leading Age conference, just kind of trying to keep an open mind, thinking about, is there anyone out there who's doing anything, innovative with staffing or anything? And she really felt like there was a missing piece. And that was particularly for people living with dementia, who don't always interact with technology in the same way that I think the developers of these technologies might hope.
Right.
Not that it's not possible, but I do think that it takes even getting people to engage with a technology platform takes a dedicated person to facilitate the engagement.
Right.
And so I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle for engagement, particularly for people living with dementia. And so we came up with Connectivities, which is a grab and go in general solution. And we create activities around kind of a calendar themed approach, just like you would in a community setting. We come up with activities, they're fun, purposeful, therapeutic activities that give people the opportunity to connect with each other. So if you're in a caregiving at home situation or in a group situation, we provide group solutions or just one-on-one solutions. It's just hands-on activities with lots of kind of entry points to a really meaningful, authentic connection. And so we provide every single thing you need to do the activity, other than water or scissors. We don't put those in the mail. Then we also provide printed instructions, video instructions, differentiation or modifications based on if it's too hard or too easy. So if you think this activity is going to be too hard for your loved one, here's some things you can do. Or if you think it's going to be too easy, here's some things you can do. And then we even include therapy goals so that whether your loved one is working on those goals or the group that you're working with, you can see the good that can be done with this activity. Every activity addresses areas in cognitive, physical, social, emotional, and sensory skills. So I think for people who are looking to build neuroplasticity or maintain fine motor skills, maintain gross motor skills, and we also all know that people who are living with dementia, the disease process manifests differently with every person. And so that we really purposefully didn't say, oh, this is for people at this stage.
Right.
Because we've had residents who have had really strong language skills through end stage dementia, yet there were other things that they couldn't do. They might not be able to tie their shoes. They might not, that procedural memory may not be intact with the with physical kinds of things. And we've had people lose language really early on, but still have the ability, even though they can't outwardly communicate, they still have the ability to process information and communicate in some ways. And so we wanted to leave room for the different strengths that still remain.
I love
because
the
I think
focus
that's
on that. Yes.
yeah, that's a really important place to be. So yeah, so that's kind of
Oh
Connectivities.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you so graciously sent me a box and I had the opportunity to look through it and it just stood out to me how clear everything was in the communication, which is as family caregivers and when we're in those environments working with our older adults, we need the time and we need the foresight to be able to step in and participate in those things and not have to have all of the mental energy, like you said, to think of
Right.
every little detail. We already have a lot that we're managing. The communication is amazing. The focus on the strengths, the thoughtfulness, it's incredibly well organized. As families, we can feel really empowered and feel like we have hope that there's ways we can connect with the people that we're serving. So thank you. I will say everyone really has to go look at this because I found, I don't know if you know this, but when I started my career, I was working in a senior living community and I was the director of therapeutic recreation,
Yeah.
volunteers in spiritual care. And so what this would have done for my staff and my community to be able to have access to the grab and go that foresight has already been in place would have been huge. So from my lens, actually being in that role, this is incredibly well done and speaks to even when we're planning goals for our residents, we had to look at the physical component, the emotional, the social. What goals are we trying to meet and maintain for for the residents that we serve. So I love that it can be adapted, the QR code. I mean, there's so many things that you guys really thought through that make it impressive and something that I want people to interact and engage with, and especially those families, like you had mentioned. We're focusing on some of those activities of daily living. We're managing cooking meals and making sure everyone's safe and happy and fed, all of that. An important factor where we don't want to lose how we connect to our loved ones, right? If we're only interacting in those skills and tasks ways, we're losing out on the relationship that we can still have. And part of that is, do you feel like there is this, I don't know if stigma is the right word, when we have persons living with dementia and families where we think that they've lost that ability to connect? Can you share with us more about that, how we have to change our mindset around that and that it is possible?
Big time. I just made a note while you're talking about that.
Perfect.
I feel like a huge part, especially for family caregivers, is processing our own grief. And that through the process of looking at what our loved one has lost, it's hard to see what's still there. And so we have to adjust our expectations for how we connect with them. And one of the things that we get a lot is, I don't know how to connect with my loved one now, or they wouldn't do that, or they would never have done that, like participated in whatever kind of activity we have going. But there's multiple perspectives that we can look at it from. And it's a process of opening our mind to the ways that this person might feel successful through an activity like this. So, for example, my husband is very handy and, loves to do, I wouldn't say he doesn't like to let anyone else do home projects, which results in him doing. Yeah. And he is very good at them. And so he ends up with quite a few of them. And so if he ends up living with dementia and we're in this caregiving role, even though his hobbies are around, fishing, hunting, do it yourself, construction, woodworking kind of things, he wouldn't be able to safely do those things.
Right.
But he does really enjoy the process of a task, the process of being a part of planning it out, having the conversation about how it should be done and how it should be completed. And so looking at how we can engage our loved one in a successful connection and interaction through this activity. It's not about what the activity is making. It's about process of getting someone involved in the activity. So, and this is, I think, common that we have roadblocks when we're dealing with men. And at Prairie Elder Care, we actually have our ratio of men is a little higher than what you would find in a typical setting, because our setting just really works for men and not very many do. So our men are our most avid participators in Connectivities, because they want to be doing things and they want to be involved. One of my favorite activities in our April box is just this it's making button flowers. So you put some buttons, different size buttons on like some little floral wire, and it makes these cute flowers. Who cares if it's not that they didn't like flowers and making crafts, but they probably loved helping or planning. Or let's not forget every dad who was given tons of unwanted advice, right?
Yeah.
So do you think I should do this button first? This, what order should we put this in? Oh, Dad, can you hold this button for me so think about the part that they can do, that they can be successful with. And it's not about, we say this all the time, it's not about the product. It's about the process and the connection that you feel during that process. And so I think our guys love it so much because they want to help everybody. They want to feel productive. And so it really gives them that feeling no matter what the actual thing is that they're doing. And one thing that I'll say about Connectivities and our process for coming up with the activities, we actually trial everything. So we have 2 phases of trials. So phase 1 is trialing the concept of the activity. And our activity types are very broad. We work really, really hard to not just make it arts and crafts. So we have building and problem solving. We have games that are around, a lot of times they'll construct something that turns into a game that they can physically play. We have science experiments, which I know people are like, why would you do science? They are so fun because there's nothing like this creating awe with what you're doing. So some really simple science experiments that have kind of cool results. We do sensory activities that really tend to lead us to some great reminiscing opportunities. We always have some writing and language. For people that can write, even copying writing, it sounds super boring, very rote, whatever. There's a lot of research out there that it is really good for the brain. Wow. So if you can even write a word and they copy it, that's a really good activity for their brain. So we have all of these different types of activities. And so we trial the concept. Oh, that concept worked great. So then let's refine it. We work hard not to make it too childish, even though, most, and one of the things I will say is most of our residents are moderate to end stage dementia. And so we work really hard not to make it seem childish, even though their functional level is maybe that of a 3 or 4-year-old. So, and that's okay. This comes back to that whole scaffolding idea. I think that comes from being an educator.
Nice, so good.
You picture it like a scaffold. And what are the different levels of support that I can provide to this person so that they hit that just right level where they can feel successful? So after we trial the concept, then we trial the materials. When we look at the cognitive skills, we want to make sure that we're doing some sequencing, we're doing some problem solving, utilizing some language, some reminiscing and recall, coming to it from a really therapeutic place.
Yes. Yeah. And it shows. You can see that. See that.
Thank you.
When we say the word connection, I feel like, it's one of my favorite words. I probably use it all the time.
I'm obsessed with it right now for a couple of reasons. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but how do we actually really define that? And what things build connection when we're interacting with our loved ones? What would you say is that for you?
So I want to start by saying how important I think it is, and it's why I'm obsessed with it right now.
Yeah.
I am reading a book. It was released in January. It's called The Good Life, and it is by, let's see, I've put it up on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
But it is by the 2 current directors of the Harvard Happiness Study. And the Harvard Happiness Study is the longest ongoing scientific study of happiness ever. And it's been going on for 84 years. And the primary learnings of the study are that connections and relationships are the key to happiness. And we believe that connection is still important for populations that are hard to connect with. And so we're actually developing Connectivities for more than just people living with dementia, but people with other cognitive changes, cognitive and social differences that might make it hard for somebody to connect with others. And so we want to make that connection accessible to as many people as possible. And so the way I define connection is that shared feeling of when you have a knowing of each other in that moment.
I love
So
that.
it doesn't mean that you have it in the past. It doesn't mean that it's going to be retained, but that in that moment, you have a knowing of each other, that you've shared a connection either around you helped me with this, and I know you felt good because you helped me, and you know that I appreciate the help, or that we connected over a story about fishing. And one of the things, and this is, I can't help but just kind of throw little tips in there. One of the ways that I have found is a really great way to initiate a connection around a topic, not a like, will you help me with this kind of thing, but if it's a little bit more topical, is to share a story, a brief story. We don't want to take up our whole time with somebody telling a story, but something like, heard you like fishing. You know what I love about fishing? You know, I actually prefer, and this is something I would honestly say, I prefer, and I'm probably super weird in this way, but I like taking the fish off the hook rather than the process of getting the fish on the hook.
Right.
Fishing itself is kind of boring to me, but give me that fish and give me the challenge of getting the hook out of its mouth. I love that. And then I might lead in to, are you the kind of person who likes to get the fish on the hook or take the fish off the hook or something like that? So that I'm inviting them into a connection. And so I think it's just those invitations to connect. So I can invite them in a way that says, hey, I've got these 3 different buttons that I'm going to use, that I need to use. I'm working on this project. You know, that's a way to get my husband in. I've got a project that I need some help with. And I'd really like your opinion. And, you know, and so I'm putting these 3 buttons to make a flower. Which one should I use? Which one should I put on first? Can you help me with holding this button while I thread this through the holes, you know? And so we're connecting when he's the helper and I'm being helped. I've got the project and he's giving me input. So I would say those are all connections. And I think we have this misnomer that it has to be super deep, that a connection has to be initiated by somebody else, that it has to be super two-sided. And I think that people, particularly people living with dementia and other brain changes, need us to be the ones that create the connection, that create that foundation, because they may not have the ability to initiate it, but they have the ability to feel it.
Yes. Oh, so good. Yeah.
So what we're really going for is that feeling of that moment of connecting. When we then can build on those moments, not only does this fill the care recipient's cup, it fills the caregiver's cup, because you need that connection too, to accomplish both of those things in one, when you guys have to spend so much time together, and you know, to be able to get that for both sides of the equation, I think is really, really important. And then that makes both sides of the equation, the things that happen after, maybe turn out better. You know, there's less frustration. As a caregiver, I'm less frustrated. As the care recipient, they're less frustrated. And I think we can build on that.
Thank you for giving families and caregivers permission. We're not bringing in the past and we're not in the future. And especially with how the brain changes in that process, it really is the moment. And that's what we hang on to. Yeah.
Use the past to connect in the moment, and we can use the present to connect in the moment.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's really important to think about, how do I invite this person into a moment together?
Families also, I think, don't always know what opportunities or how to connect with their loved one in those moments.
Right.
You know, I think if you're
It's
visiting, if you're
hard.
maybe out of town or maybe you live far away, do you have any recommendations for families to stay connected when you're not able to be there all of the time? Maybe you're coming for a visit.
Yeah, well, I think when you're coming for a visit, I think this part's hard. I think, and I know people will say, oh, that's so much easier said than done. But I think it's really important to think about the visit needs to not be about me and what I need to get from my loved one, but it needs to be about them and how we can connect. And so being curious, I think that's kind of a buzzword right now, curiosity.
Yeah.
But I think being curious about what might invite them to connect, what type of invitations to connect they might be open to. Because especially when you're dealing with a loved one who is experiencing the progression of a disease like dementia, they're always working to save face. And so that yes or no question is often going to be answered with no, because no is the safest answer. There is no risk in no.
Right.
So how can I control my own expectations so that any connection will fill my cup and so that I can fill theirs? I think when we connect with our loved ones, when we don't have, or when we visit and we don't have tons of opportunities to connect all the time, there's so many expectations put on that. And we put them on ourselves and we put them on our loved one. And then there's just so many ways we can be disappointed. There is no, in handling any kind of progressive disease and caregiving situation, we're all going to have more than our fair share of disappointments. But I think if we can manage our expectations in a way that leave us open to being curious about the best connection, the best way to connect, and keeping in mind a scaffold, so what does my loved one need in order to connect, and how can I provide the scaffolding to get them there?
Yeah, such good advice. There's so many ways that I think we hold ourselves back as families from connecting with the unknown. We don't always know how we're still learning about the disease process. It's scary. And so to have the scaffolding and those mechanisms in place that make that dynamic a little bit easier, or give us the understanding of, okay, we can do this. This is manageable, and we're going to foster that. There is some trial and error involved, like you said, being curious about what your loved one needs, but the foundation is there, and that is so important. I'm so excited about what you guys are up to. Just you're changing the mindset around that, not only in what you're doing with Prairie Elder Care, but also with Connectivities. And tell us what's next. How are you hopeful for the future and seeing this movement of connection growing? I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, well, our focus, I think, is, we started with an amazing subscription box, and our goal was really to just give people a month of stuff that they could do with their loved ones and just have this great time with them. And I think we realized that might be overwhelming for some people. I'm sure you can attest to, there's a lot in the box.
Yes, so many good options. And,
yes,
you might
but it
need
might
a
be
little
overwhelming
simple.
at the same time. And then as a new business, we are learning as we go and collecting feedback and, just trying to learn from our customers and our potential customers. And we felt like we needed some different price points and some different ways to consume Connectivities that makes it as accessible as possible to the widest number of people. And so people living with dementia, and then people also who live with cognitive differences, social differences, and other learning differences, because this type of connection is so important for so many people out there. And I think even it's important for, and I just want to stress that it's important for both sides of the connection,
right?
The caregiver and the care recipient. And so we will have materials still specifically designed for seniors. That will be an option. And then for other diverse populations is kind of how we've delineated that. Diverse learning populations. And people will be able to purchase just one activity at a time if you want. So there will be 2 options for every purchase: a digital download where you can download all of our great instructions. You can benefit from all the trialing we've done, but you will have the opportunity to order your own materials, and we will give you links to all of the materials that we work so hard to trial, so you'll get kind of the whole foolproof package, but you can do it yourself. And so if you might have some of those things laying around or some of that kind of stuff, so you can be a little bit more in control, and you'll be able to also access all of our video supports as well, and the therapy goals, and all of that will be included in the digital download. And then you can purchase our full grab and go experience, which is every single thing included except water and scissors. And actually we're adding glue to that because we know that so many of our subscribers, if any of them are listening, we get that you have way too much glue now.
Yeah. Oh my word, it's like when I buy school supplies for my kids and I'm like, how do I now have 10 glue sticks even?
Exactly. Exactly. And so we might even have like a replenishing kit on the website of those things that we don't include, so that you don't get too many. So there's 2 different purchasing options: digital or the full grab and go experience. And then you can buy single activities that way. You can buy themed activities that way, and you can still subscribe. But we will still have the monthly subscription that is a little bit more calendar and seasonal focused. So it's nice to do if you are working in a community or you're, just like doing those things with your loved one. We will also keep your eye out is a build your own box.
Love that.
So that you can pick the activities that you want and then get a discount for buying, and they'll come in sets of 4.
I love the options. I love the price points. We want to have those available to us when we're,
they will start, and we're bringing down our subscription price point as well. So the price points will be starting from $3.99 to I think $34.99. So
that's perfect. Yes. Okay. And I believe I read this somewhere, but do you also have the Spotify playlist that goes along with some of that? I love that. I'm like a huge music person, and especially with dementia, music is huge.
We do. And we have lots of included in our digital products. We have music videos with our music therapist, Katie, who is just as cute as she can be and does a phenomenal job. We have Spotify playlists that go along with our themes. And then we also offer home exercise program. So if you're working with somebody at home or working with a group in a group setting, they're really good therapeutic exercises. It's different, we do at our homes, we do the silver sneakers chair exercises, that everybody can do on their own. But then these are a little bit more purposeful for neuroplasticity, for recovering from strokes and things. They're, reaching across the midline, balance, those kinds of really important things for people who are experiencing brain changes. So there's home exercise programs that are accessible as well.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. So where can we learn more? Where do we go? I hope everybody comes and looks and checks it out and implements that.
Me too. Yeah. I always love visiting with you, Nicole. You're just so warm, and I love it.
I love it.
So connectivities.us is our website. We also try to provide support via our social media channels, particularly on Instagram. So giving tips for connecting, and then just really cute product videos and, kind of how to use them, how we come up with them.
Those ideas are so great. Yeah.
Just to give people a little bit more insight. So Facebook, we also have a Facebook group for people who are our customers. So we have special access to a Facebook group for them. LinkedIn, we're on LinkedIn. We do a little bit with TikTok. Haven't totally tackled.
Oh my gosh, I haven't either. I'm like still trying to figure it out.
I know.
I'm like,
I think I might wait until this whole climate about what's going to happen with TikTok.
I agree.
And we'll continue to invest our energy.
Okay, we'll talk after. Yeah. This has been so great. And thank you for showing people what's possible and to be in the moment and to know that connection in any way is vital and that we need that. And I appreciate you sharing your story and visiting with me. It's been such a pleasure this morning. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for helping us spread the word.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.